Okay, we are live. Okay, so traffic hiccups, technology hiccups, but we will be starting soon. I just wanted to make sure that we were live at the time because I know sometimes people got antsy in the past when we were still back behind the screen. Is it behind the screen, Erica? In the green, you're muted. The green screen. Okay. So let's start. I'm going to start with my introduction. Juan will be joining us. And then Erica, you can do. Actually, let's start with you, Erica. Tell everybody who you are, why you're here. And, as a Hokie, let's say your favorite memory okay. Thank you for your vintage Virginia Tech. Your favorite memory at Virginia Tech. Okay, you're still muted.
Well, when you scared me by saying they can hear us, I muted my mic. But anyway, yes. So Erica Moore, and I was at Virginia Tech a few years ago, just a few years ago. But
when was that?
Yeah, it was a while back, just a little bit. But anyway, I think, gosh, there were so many good memories at Virginia Tech, real interesting ones. But I think one of my I don't know if I'd call it favorite, but it's memorable, was the cold walks across the drill field.
Oh my God.
So, yeah. I lived in West AJ, Ambler Johnston.
Yeah, same.
Which was, oh, that's right. You told me that.
We lived in the same dorm.
But as a computer science major, I spent lots of time in McBride Hall, which is all the way on the other side of campus across the drill field. And at that time, the drill field was not paved. And pretty much every day in Blacksburg, there's some sort of precipitation. So
because it's the path, mountains.
Yes. So the path across the drill field was super muddy. And I had 8 a.m. 5-hour calculus classes.
Perfect.
Yeah, I had to go all the way across that drill field at about 7:30 in the morning with the wind, like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back in the mud. Yeah, it was.
But you hide behind somebody big. That's what I learned.
Well, yeah, you could, but at 7:30 in the morning, there just weren't very many people, big or small, that were crazy enough to have those early classes that you had to walk across the drill field for in the wintertime. But, I think some of the more favorite, though, were like traying. Did you all do that, Jen?
Oh, with the
cafeteria tray.
I was always.
We didn't have slides.
I was such a. What's that thing called? Like, I was so paranoid that I was going to get in trouble that I never did it.
No,
I never stole the tray. Like
we put them back.
Stolen.
We took them back. We didn't exactly.
Yeah, but I was like, I don't want to be the person that takes a tray out.
Yeah. It was just a borrow because we took them back. If they didn't get broken, we took them back.
Yes. Okay, so Erica Moore, 5 Rings Financial.
5 Rings Financial. Tray. Yeah, teaching people about money and helping them.
Promise you one is coming, y'all. I got stuck in traffic coming back. Erica, you've been home all day, so not really, but I'll tell you my story. Jennifer Jesse, I go by Jen the Tutor. I work with students who are going to college. We provide comprehensive services, so we do all the way from testing, test prep, all the way up to, right now we're negotiating financial aid because you can negotiate your financial aid, just to be clear. The first offer is not always the last offer. So we were just talking. Erica stole. Did you know Erica stole cafeteria trays?
No.
So
borrowed.
If the statute of limitation one is not over, you can still prosecute her.
Oh, it's over. It was way back.
What year did you say it was?
It was way back. Just say the statute is certainly over for that.
Yeah,
but they were borrowed. They were returned if they didn't get broken. Just saying.
Right. So stole. Okay. So we established that. I was about to share my favorite memory. Well, I went when the drill field was paved, but it was still cold.
Lucky you.
Weston was right across the hall. So I went to Dietrich and I went to, Dietz, but West End was my bread and butter.
It existed when I was there, but it was for athletes only. So you had to know someone to get the hookup to go there, and it was not that good.
It's great.
It's a totally different story now.
Lobster and like I heard you guys got hibachi.
London broil.
London. Oh my gosh, with the mashed potato and the gravy. Yeah,
I still go there when I come in now.
The Hokie Club. Love that. That's an oldie but a goodie. The potato skin. Anyway, let's not talk. Sorry,
you're making me hungry.
The omelet bar on Sundays for brunch.
Oh, these are good memories.
I had none of those. Eggs on a sheet from a pan. I had none of those.
Yeah.
I remember, Jen, when you suggested we had come for a game, I think maybe the first time we traveled down to Tech together. And after the game, Jen was like, well, we need to get something to eat before we hit the road. And she's like, let's just eat in the calf. I was like, what?
If I'm on campus, I eat at West End.
Well, I understand now because you insisted, and I was like,
it's great. It's delicious.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
And I don't know if you noticed, Juan, she has her vintage Hokie on.
I know. I got my Hokie as well, but it's just not
That's a new one. Here. I feel like we're actually representing all three because that's the old one. This one is
that's kind of in between, and that's
in between, and you have the newest one.
This is brand appropriate. That is correct.
Yes. Okay, Juan. So we got started, said everything about us, but do you want to tell our audience about you?
Sure. I'm originally from Northern Virginia, grew up in Burke, Virginia. I am a first generation student. So my parents are from Bolivia and they came here in the 1970s. And as an immigrant family, always instilled in us, education is so key to the American experience. And so college, when we were being raised, really wasn't an option. It was something that we had to do. But since they had not gone through the process themselves, were our biggest cheerleaders, but weren't necessarily our guides.
Right.
And so it was an interesting process for each of me and my brothers. I have an older brother and a younger brother on where we ended up for different reasons. But I ended up at Virginia Tech because I knew I had to stay in state for cost reasons. And so I kind of got a map and looked at, okay, I'm in Northern Virginia. Where's the furthest I can be from Northern Virginia and still be in state? And discovered this small town in Blacksburg. Went to visit for open house and just absolutely fell in love with the place. Now, Juan Espinosa, obviously I'm Latino and my parents are very close. We're very close family. And so them picturing me being 4 hours away was a really tough thing for them to process. And I remember even for coming for open house, my mom was crying the whole way. Like, why do you want to leave me? And why are you coming away? And all of this. But when we got here, we sensed, and she was able to see as well, this is a very welcoming community, to the point when we left for open house, she said, I don't want you to be this far away, but I know that this is a good home for you for 4 years. And that has always resonated with me, to the point where when I started here many years ago, 1999 as my first year, I never left. Right. And they still kind of kid around with me. My brothers and my family are like, when are you graduating? When are you coming home?
Oh, yeah.
And that's kind of the Hokie experience. It's a really unique and special place. And it can really kind of pull you in because of the value system they have here.
Right.
It's just a beautiful part of the state. It really is. It really is.
Especially like during the fall. Like during the fall, before that winter hits, those 2.5 weeks are.
I thought you were going to say days, but go ahead.
I mean, my Virginia Tech story was I wanted to skip English, and a Virginia Tech recruiter was coming. I know, it was shocking. And Katie told me, hey, if we sign up for this presentation, we can skip English today. So I went, and then they put the price on the whatever. And I had been working at IHOP since I was 16 at that point, had worked on some campaigns before that. And I was like, I could afford this. Like, I could do this. The other thing, though, is I confused Virginia Tech with CNU, and I thought I was going to the beach until 8 hours before I left, and I was packing a bikini, and my mom was like, "Why are you packing a bikini?" I was like, "Because we're going to the beach. We're going to the beach."
Sure.
Yeah, I was like, "We're going to the beach," right? And my mother had to bring out a map and be like, "We're going here. We're not going to the beach." But then I saw the Torg Bridge, and I was like, I don't know what it was about the Torg Bridge.
Yeah,
but
that was
like, to this day, it still has like a special place in my heart because it made me feel secure. I guess I don't know what it is about that entrance coming through, and I'm glad that we went that direction as opposed to the other direction. But I was like, yeah, I could do this. But my mother thought she saw the cows, and she's like, "There's no way she'll be back in 4 weeks." And then she refused to call me for the first 4 weeks, just to like force me to be, focused. So
and that was before the bypass, right?
Right. Yeah.
Through Christiansburg. Yeah.
Yeah. I was very confused when I came back. Erica, what's your story?
Oh my gosh. The first time I came back after the bypass opened, my husband was with me. We were coming down for some sort of reunion, and I was lost. And he looked at me. He's like, I thought you'd been here before. Like, this is totally different. Now, once we came into town, I was like, okay, now I know where I am. But it was not, it was totally different.
But how did you find out about Virginia Tech?
Oh, how did I find? My godmother was a guidance counselor at Fort Hunt, and I kind of was like,
Erica, I'm gonna have to let you tell the story. I just realized I locked my entire family outside.
Okay, well, you go let them in. That's not good. Well, anyway, I kind of was like you, Juan. I wanted to go away, but my parents had told me I had to stay in state, and I thought, well, that's far. And they hosted a weekend for Black students, and I went for that.
Black Student Preview at the time.
Yes, it's been a while, but I went. I had a blast, and I was like, "Oh yeah, this is where I want to go." I mean, it was a great weekend, I must say. And then I wanted to go into computer science, and when I looked at the schools, across the board, Virginia Tech had the best program, and probably still does.
Yeah.
So it was a great fit. It was a wonderful weekend. You had the major I wanted. I got accepted into the major. So, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. And it helps to have a guidance counselor so close to you.
Oh, yeah. She was super, super helpful in helping me traverse all of that. I felt very, very blessed.
Yeah, that's awesome. Oh, I think you're on mute, Jen.
So, yeah, as I catch my breath, because I do this at least once a week. I forget that I'm the only one with the key. One, I said that we're going to kind of do like a barbershop style.
Yeah.
So I'm going to tell you exactly what I hear in the barbershop, barbecues. This is it. Like, I'm going to do a representation.
Yeah.
And take some water because I decided to run, and that was not a good plan.
That's fine. Yeah, I'm really excited about this format this evening. I think it's going to allow for a lot of transparency, just casualness, and
I was telling somebody today, they were like, well, maybe they saw the light. And I was like, I don't need light. I need truth and transparency, because I think for me and for Erica as a parent, because her Skylar is coming up. Once you know what a school is looking for and what they can and can't do, then you can say, okay, this is a good fit for me, or it's not, right? Because I think one of our tenets is there's a college out there looking for you. So instead of focusing and fixating on one or two schools, you should be looking for, I like this characteristic about Virginia Tech. What other schools have this characteristic, right? Mm-hmm. But number one thing I hear is, yeah, I want to go to Virginia Tech, but it's too expensive. I'm going to be paying full cost. Northern Virginia kids don't get money. Everybody I know has not gotten money. And one, if somebody told me last year, I mean, Erica knows this because Erica's been with me on the Virginia Tech journey. Erica, if I told you last year we would be doing this year, what would you have said?
I would have said it. I would have felt your forehead.
Yeah. I was like, burn every bridge with Virginia Tech. They're not giving Northern Virginia students money. I had a blog post. I did announcements. I was all over Twitter. Like, I got text messages today. Are you okay? Have you sold out? Are they paying you? What's going on?
For the record, I discouraged her from all of that.
I sold out, you would not, because I'd be like all decked out. The whole thing would be maroon and orange over here. I'm not below selling out. But I think the biggest concern is the biggest narrative in Northern Virginia is Virginia Tech wants our students, but they want them to pay full price. Mm-hmm. And everybody that I've worked with has paid full price. And so you reached out to me and you were like, hey, we're trying.
Yeah, we are.
We're trying to change. It's not, and to be clear, I also learned that Juan's a Scorpio. So Juan is somebody who works on something without communicating back, hey, I'm working on it. It's like, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Let me get to work. So Juan, can you tell us what you're doing? And should students who do not have money and cannot pay full price, should they, and they're in Northern Virginia at a competitive school, should they be applying? And what are you all doing to make sure that they are financially secure and our middle class and low income students aren't priced out of this option?
Yeah. Well, one, the core answer, yes, they absolutely should apply. Now, is there room for us to be better and making Virginia Tech more affordable? Absolutely. And I think I need to make that clear, because I don't want to provide a false impression that, hey, you know, apply to Virginia Tech, and if you're meeting our standards and what we're looking for admissions wise, we'll take care of the rest. We're not quite there yet, but we've made huge gains from where we were. Full recognition that there's still a lot of work left to take place. Now, let me talk about the Northern Virginia piece first. I mentioned how Northern Virginia, and I've never said this before publicly, but I'm gonna let you in.
We love that. An exclusive.
I thought the same thing as a Northern Virginia student, even years ago. It was like, hey, you know, we're in Northern Virginia. We've got, excuse me, all these wonderful school systems. They're preparing us to head on to secondary education. But there's so many of us that we're competing with each other for an X amount of slots across for at least for the flagships of Virginia. And that's something I remember as a high school student being like, I'm going to apply, but I'm in competition, not just with everyone in my school, but in Northern Virginia.
Yeah.
It took me a while to understand, and it really took me to get into the field of admissions to understand that's not the case. And here's why. And it makes sense once you hear the reasoning.
Okay.
Virginia Tech, and if you all disagree with this, let me know.
Okay.
Virginia Tech is most interested in pursuing the best and the brightest, right?
Okay.
Wherever those students are. And so we are, as an institution, in a position to realize that we attract the best and brightest to Virginia Tech, and they go through our programs, and we're able to be part of their journey. They're going to do wonderful things when they graduate. And when they're doing wonderful things when they graduate, they represent Virginia Tech. They represent the value system. They represent the institution, the brand. And then maybe way down the road, as they're representing us and doing great things, they remember to write a check and send it back to us too, right?
That's very important for the Virginia Tech model. They definitely do call you. Yeah, okay.
Yes, they do.
So it's multi-pronged, I guess you could say. But that key component, we're most interested in the best and brightest. It would not be to our advantage to limit our pool in any way geographically to prevent that from happening. And my evidence to this is when you look at our most recent incoming class, Northern Virginia, and I know there's different definitions of what Northern Virginia is.
That's a good
but Northern Virginia, I'm going off the official one.
Okay, what's the official one?
It's like Fairfax, Loudon, Fairfax City, Falls Church, Arlington, Alexandria, Prince William, Stafford, Fauquier, I know some go into Winchester, Front Royal, and no offense to them, but that's technically northern, but not necessarily what people traditionally picture as Northern Virginia, DC metro area, but this is the Virginia side. That represents about 30% of the Virginia population if you look at the most recent completed census. Okay. Of our incoming class for in-state students, that represents 48% of our incoming class.
Oh, wow.
So that's the hard truth. Those are the numbers. In that, no, we're not limiting our pool in any way. In fact, the evidence of this is if you go to any college fair in Northern Virginia, you don't just see Virginia Tech. You see hundreds of other colleges and universities there trying to recruit those students.
Right.
Because we're not the only ones interested in them. The country's interested in them.
Right.
And as you look, and Jen, I know you're really familiar with the changing the dynamics of demographics in the country and the enrollment cliff.
The cliffs. Yeah.
Virginia is not really in a position for growth, but they're not in a position for decrease either. Yeah. So in a lot of ways, you have a highly educated population here that also has high mobility because of income. Colleges are coming here. And so we know that. And we know we have to be competitive. And when there are out-of-state colleges offering in-state waivers, so we look at some flagships out-of-state that are offering in-state tuition for some of these students, we know we have to react. And that's essentially what's happening now is as an institution, we know we have to be more competitive financially.
Okay.
Yeah. One thing, although we recognize that we have work to do on the affordability front, and there's a new effort and initiative that's being launched to focus just on that. One important piece, although we know we have work to be done in that area, we want to be transparent. And I want to point out that as an institution, when we offer a student admission, we also tell them exactly what their financial aid package is at that moment. And we're the only flagship in Virginia, to my knowledge, that is doing that right now.
That's true. I would say if you get an offer from Virginia Tech, you're getting your financial aid offer. You're not waiting. Like in some cases, you're waiting till what? I'm like March, April 22nd before the May 1st deadline.
Yeah.
But then what happens if it's a full price offer?
Yeah. And so that's the part where I said we have to work on more. Our biggest, I don't want to use the word issue because it's not an issue. We're a high volume institution. We have 30,000 undergraduates, and our incoming class for just first year students is over 7,000 students. And so where a lot of universities are looking at much smaller groups they have to fund, we have a really big group we're trying to fund. And we're also trying to diversify. And we've been very public in that. We've been very public with our goals of making sure our incoming class of students 40% of them identify from an underrepresented or underserved background. So we've been very bold in these conversations under the leadership of our president, Dr. Sands. But the affordability, where we gained a lot in a lot of areas, the affordability is what we are focusing on now because we realize we need to do more.
Okay.
And so that is where we're trying to move the needle right now. In state, we're really trying our best to make it a real option. And when you're dealing with 7,000, well, it's more than 7,000 because that's who we actually confirm and get deposits from. But in reality, we're offering more than 20,000 of our pool of 47,000 applicants. Mm-hmm. I know you understand that because of how
you're shaping and you're
but most students,
your mouth,
most students hear 7,000 spots, 47,000 applications, and they think they're only offering 7,000 people. No, that's not the case.
Right.
There are students that are offered to Virginia Tech who decide not to come. I don't get it, but it happens.
Right.
And so we have to account for that because the number of applications that students are sending out are increasing. Right. When I was in college, and I'm not too far from, I think we're only about a year separate.
I'm 2000. I'm 2003. I started in 2002, 2003.
Okay, so I started.
Erica, you were 2000?
Not exactly.
Yeah,
no, I left tech in 1988.
Yeah,
you're a little ahead of us.
Yes, a little. Yeah,
just a tad.
So we started at the same time. I did an extra degree and I ended up leaving in 2004 because I loved the experience. I was looking for an excuse to stay longer. But yeah, so we realized we've got to do more with the affordability piece, but we also don't want to provide the impression that we're tricking people. Right. And so from the moment they're offered, there isn't this lag of, hey, you're offered at Virginia Tech, now wait 3 to 4 weeks to figure out if it's a reality. We tell them you're offered and here's what we can give. And it's at the exact same time. Right. Better or worse. I recognize there are some cases where it could be better, but we're not trying to mislead them in any way. We're telling them right off the bat, this is what we can do. Now, what our hope as an institution is, what we can do will grow substantially in the coming years to make it more of a reality, especially for our low-income students, particularly our Pell eligible students, to make sure that we're closing in the gap on what that needs to be to make Virginia Tech a reality. We recognize we have room to grow there.
Got it. But if I'm a low income or Northern Virginia student and I can't afford Virginia Tech, where does that leave me? So, like you can do a net price calculator. It can give you a sense. Like you can type in Virginia Tech net price calculator and it can give you a sense. You can get your offer. But I think one of the concerns of Northern Virginia students is like, I get my offer and I get my financial aid offer. I'm still considering Virginia Tech. Then there's a lag between the scholarship pool because you have an opportunity to go into the scholarship pool, right? So, and you can do that in advance, but then there's sometimes where the student's like, well, I don't even know if I'm going to get in. And unfortunately, with the scholarship pool, every donor has decided what they want to do, right? Like every donor, like some donors are like, hey, just click, whatever. And then some people are like, we want an essay. So a student might be writing 1,000, 2,000 words, and it might like 200 here, 100 here, whatever. Then they're waiting to hear back on that scholarship, and they don't have certainty about whether they're going to afford it until those scholarships either come in or don't come in. So I guess the question is, if a student is in a position, they see the sticker price, they see their net price calculator, they say, I cannot afford Virginia Tech. My concern, and I think you and I have talked about this, my concern is not for the students who have the financial security to say, no matter what, this is my dream school, I'm going to Virginia Tech. And I'm not a huge fan of dream schools, but I'm going to Virginia Tech. This is where I'm going, right? No matter what the money is, I'll take out loans, whatever. But there are other students that say, well, everybody's telling me that there might not be money, so I'm not even going to apply, even though they might be a good applicant, and then they might 2 or 3 weeks later get a scholarship offer. So what do you say to the students who are like, I want to go to Virginia Tech, but I'm not sure if I can afford it, and I'm not sure if I can wait for this scholarship offer? Because we do see, without the NACAC regulations, unfortunately, there is pressure to like, okay, you can come, you don't have to put in your deposit, but if you're going to accept the scholarship, you need to tell us by the state, right?
Yeah.
So there are some unethical, in my opinion. Not even that's a fact. That's unethical. Yeah. So that's unethical. But there's pressure to close. What do you tell a low-income student or a student that's like, I cannot afford this for undergrad? What do you tell them while we're waiting for this to be fixed? And like somebody like Erica, who's money conscious, Erica, what do you say to those students? Like, should you expect a full price? Should you not expect a full price? What's the verdict on this? Yeah. And how many years till a solution?
Yeah. So the money conscious piece, that's such a good point. It's not, but I want to make sure it's not just low income students that are money. Yeah. You're seeing research showing now there's upper middle class, that high mobility group are much more into a shopper mentality now because they're really viewing this as an investment. They're looking at the ROI.
Erica, you're speaking Erica's language.
It's different because years ago, I mean, I remember when my semester at Virginia Tech was like $900 to $1,000.
Yeah, 3,000 for me, total with everything.
So it was quarters when I was there, but yeah.
So you remember that, and so it was more about fit than affordability.
It was very affordable. It was
the most affordable college in the country, and not the country, in the Commonwealth.
For sure.
Yeah. And have you seen it? This isn't a Virginia Tech issue. This is a higher education issue. You've seen costs increase substantially more than even inflation. Even during the times of high inflation that we're seeing now, it's always outpaced that. And so the times, and I always explain this to my wife because we have a kid who's a junior, and she's like, hey, you and I paid ourselves through school. She needs to do that too. There's a lot of good life lessons from that. And it's explained to her, no, those days are gone.
It's not the same.
You can't work enough as an undergraduate and cover the cost of tuition, room. It's those days are long gone. And so to answer your question, if I had a student across from me right now that was low income, I said, hey, I want to do Virginia Tech, but I'm hearing that it's expensive and, the aid is questionable. What do I do? I would encourage them to apply. I would also make sure that they're aware that we have a fantastic application fee waiver program. So they don't feel like they've got to spend money to figure out, is this reality? I would explain that, hey, if you're free reduced lunch, you get a fee waiver. We have we're very generous with fee waivers to make sure that that's not a barrier. Before I started as director, only about 3 to 5% of our entire applicant pool was low income. And that's measured initially by fee waivers. We made it much more accessible now to about 20 to 25% of our entire pool is low income because they're taking advantage of fee waivers. So that's the first thing, is to show, hey, I get you're nervous, but we're removing that barrier. So there's no cost to at least explore this as an option. And when they explore it as an option, I explain the process. And this is a challenge, and I know you know this, every school is different. And that is a challenge for students, especially first-gen students, to figure out, all right, how can I maximize the money from an institution to make this a reality? At Virginia Tech, we not only have the FAFSA, we have a general scholarship application. And in addition to the general scholarship application, we have some departmental scholarships. Not many, but a lot of the interest in Virginia Tech is with engineering. And Davenport is a standalone department scholarship that is pretty sizable. It's several.
I actually was on the board, but
okay,
it's sizable. He's a very generous individual.
My conversation then shifts that, hey, this is what you need to do. You need to put in the FAFSA. You need to put a general scholarship application. And then depending on the program they're interested in, you need to look at the departmental website to make sure you're putting in those applications for whatever that department is. And then I go an extra step and say, hey, if you're in state, we have really strong alumni chapters, and they also have scholarships that they're awarding, and they're not overly competitive. So I really encourage you to explore the alumni chapter. And so we're able to start having those discussions on, all right, this is what we can provide in reality as a maximum. Now, the issue is what Virginia Tech bills isn't the entire cost, right? You and I know that, but many first-gen students don't know that. And so when they see because we're very transparent, we just don't show the bill, we show actual costs. That factors in transportation, that factors in computer, that factors in other costs that we don't bill or collect, but in reality are going to be part of the experience and the cost to attend college. And so that's where we're really limited, because where we can try to match tuition or where we can try to do our best with room and board to a certain extent, and again, we're limited, but we're trying to move the needle there. Those extra costs are costs that have to be realized, that we're still trying to figure out how can we move the needle with that group. And how can we help cover the computer? How can we help provide a stipend and provide extra money for these students to not figure out how they're going to get from Northern Virginia to Blacksburg for breaks to start the semesters. So I think we made a lot of headway in how we're leveraging our dollars for the hard costs, the billable costs. But what I'm hearing from the student, like you're using as an example, that low income student is,
or even a budget-friendly Erica student.
Student.
Like an Erica student that's like, this is the budget and you better not go over it.
Well, because Juan, what I see in my practice so often is young adults who have graduated from college. They're making a decent salary, but not huge amounts of money. And they are strapped with so much student debt.
Yeah.
And it's just sad to see, because it cripples them when it comes to saving for their long-term needs, because they're buried in, in student debt. So,
Yeah.
And then I think the thing I'm seeing a lot is parents feeling the pressure. Like, there's always that conversation at the end where it's like, but I did everything you asked me to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I got into my dream school. So why shouldn't I be able to go? We're taking out the loans anyway, right? And year one, it doesn't feel like a huge commitment. But then year two, year three, the students are like, well, like the parents are like, well, can you find a scholarship? Like things start to fall apart. And then the student, especially if they're in like something like engineering and their GPA is like a 2.5, which is a great engineering
Absolutely.
GPA, but a horrible GPA for scholarships. They're not really scholarship eligible in year 2, 3, or 4 if they're in a really competitive program. So I think one of the things that we wrestle with in this area is like, I don't think people dislike Virginia Tech, but the question becomes, if they're not going to get a fee waiver, should it be on the list? Because if you're doing like Common App or something like that, you only have so many options, right? And you don't want to be putting out to everywhere. But should we be putting on the list if we really can't afford this? Like, should I even let my student go into the pool and then have to have the fight later? Like, oh, we can't afford this.
Well, I think so. I was just having a conversation prior to this with a student who's a sophomore, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And they're in the beginning of that process of looking at schools, but they're very much sensitive to the affordability aspect too. So not too far off from the scenario you just set here. For those who aren't qualifying for the fee waiver, is Virginia Tech on the list? And I would say it depends, and that's just being honest. It depends on the fit. If they've been on campus, if they feel like the community is exactly what they're looking for, and it's a strong launch pad as a support for what their trajectory they're looking for, then I would argue, yes, it should still be a destination, because there are other options. And by other options, I mean financially supported from the institution that they can explore as well as they navigate this process. The Core Cadets is an example.
Yeah.
We have
we've talked about that. Yeah.
Yeah. The Emerging Leader Scholarship. Almost every cadet gets something. It's $2,000 a year in-state, $3,000 a year out-of-state, renewable. And I want to go back too, because you made a really good point. A lot of colleges and universities only do one-time money. Virginia Tech has made that adjustment and really focuses on renewable money, because we know you're not doing anyone any favors if you front load stuff and then second year some of that money disappears. That destroys your retention rate,
right? And
that eventually impacts progression and graduation. And so that's not in the best interest of the institution. We got to move those metrics. And so we really have focused more on providing these renewable scholarships. The Beyond Boundaries scholarship program has grown substantially over the last few years to really focus on first-generation students. But I would argue, and I know I'm biased, but I would argue, yes, we should still be an option. Give us an opportunity to be able to show what we can do and work with us. I know admissions officers are intimidating characters, but we really view ourselves as guides. We want to figure it out. If you're offered admission, we want to figure out what we can do to make this work. And we have colleagues in the financial aid and scholarships area. We have colleagues in departments that we want to help you navigate this. We want to help figure this out together. And if we're not meeting that need, and it's clear we're not, we're going to tell you that. And
that is true. You are like, they will hold up their hands and be like, nothing else we can do here. Sorry. We hope you enjoy.
And that's important in a way too, because time is valuable in this process.
Right. It is.
And you have till May 1 to make a decision, and we don't want to waste anybody's time. And I've been so sensitive because I was low income. I was first gen going through this process that, hey, this is either is going to work or doesn't work. And what I find is students like me that went through this process with that type of experience, they're not necessarily tied to just one school. They're just tied to the idea of, hey, I got to get to college. Like I said, my parents said, hey, college is a big part of the American experience for success. Will open up opportunities. So if it isn't going to work here, let me know so now I can start focusing on some other areas. But if it is going to work and you're willing to work with me to try to figure out some innovative solutions, whether it's decor, whether it's Davenport, some other options, I'm ready to hear that too. But there's got to be that transparency that, hey, we're going to try some stuff, but it's not going to get to the point where you want us to be, but it will get you to this point. And so, is that going to be enough for you to continue looking at us? Or if not, then you probably need to look at some other institutions. And it's just having that frank conversation.
Right. I'm going to ask you to pick your favorite child.
I only have one. So
no, but I'm going to pick in terms of which department. Let's get in trouble now. So if you were a Northern Virginia student and let's say first generation, middle income, can't do a fee waiver, looking at the core is obviously a way to maybe reduce the cost. And I always tell people, like, the one thing I cannot not stand, but like I always tell people will say, well, I'm going to go in for a year and then I'll whatever. I'm like, dude, just if you do a year in the core, just finish the core. Because like the first year is the worst year of the core. Like once you get through the first year of the core, you might as well graduate.
The first 6 weeks, you're golden.
Yeah, like right. But if you had to say, in terms of priorities, where does the money reside? Like where the money resides is where, like, are there places, are there colleges that are really, really competitive? And yes, I do see questions coming in, but I get to this first. Are there places in the college where you would say they're looking to make investments in students? Let's say it like that.
Yeah. So I'm going to explain. It's complicated. All right.
Okay. So you're such a lawyer today.
No. It's going to make sense. All right. I'm not trying to spin this. So when you look at engineering, there's a lot of money there, right? You got Davenport, you got some other departmental scholarships, but there's a lot more competition.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And when you look at one of our smaller colleges, like College of Natural Resources, which is a top 5 environmental college, they don't have as much money. They have scholarships, but there is not nearly as much competition. That's the same College of Agriculture. That's the same with some of our smaller colleges. And so it just depends. It really does. My advice is always pursue where your passion is, because you want to make sure that you're in an academic program that you're truly interested in and you're passionate about, because that will lead to success. The more passionate and successful you are, money will follow. Whether it's scholarship money, whether it's study abroad money.
I don't know. Erica's giving you a side eye.
Whether it's when you enter the career field, money will follow.
Yeah, Erica, I totally agree with you there.
Yeah.
You create those things when you're really, really passionate.
When you're passionate about
and
something.
Know that that's the path that you want.
So for me to say, hey, you don't want a lot of competition, you want some scholarships, check out CNRE. Isn't necessarily, although on paper, statistics wise, hey, the numbers work, isn't doing a student any favors if they're not interested in forestry, packaging, some of these amazing majors we offer in that college, because they don't have the passion, they don't have the true interest in those programs. Where engineering, where we have a lot of money, if they're pursuing engineering because, hey, that's where the money is, man, you're going to have a rude awakening that first year. Erica,
about a 5-hour calculus. I remember Erica and I had very different, because I'm a humanities baby from Virginia Tech. So I was like, oh my God, it was so great. Like I just rolled out of bed and went to class. And
it was great.
It was amazing.
It was challenging, that's for sure. Especially
and then Erica was like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And architecture too. So essentially, I guess what you're saying without saying is, this is how I'm going to interpret it. If you are applying for a competitive college, it's going to be a lot of competition. So anticipate that maybe you might get lucky and get some money, but you might be paying full price. And the way that I try to reconcile that, right, is instead of thinking about college in this 4-year span, and Eric and I talk about this all the time, you have to start thinking about college and higher education in a 10-year span. How much are we spending over the next 10 years on this one student's education, right? Because, it was very clear my parents made it very clear going in. You're paying for graduate school. We'll pay for some of undergrad, but we expect some contribution on your part for undergrad, but you are paying for graduate school, right? So every dollar you save here, we might be able to help you with bar prep when I needed bar prep as a lawyer, or, housing or something like that, but we're not going to be able to chip in on the tuition. So for me, that's how I kind of try to get the students to start thinking. If you say, you know what, I'm going to go to Virginia Tech because that's going to make me a really competitive engineer, I might not get the money in the engineering program. I might get the Davenport money, I might not, but I'm going to use that as a leap pad to get into the best graduate program, then that makes sense, right? But if you're saying, now, not as a humanities major, but if you're saying, it's not a competitive major, but I love it here at Virginia Tech, it might not make sense. And that's why I always tell students, stop just thinking about Virginia Tech or other colleges just for undergrad. If you're like, okay, I can't afford it for undergrad, how can I position myself for graduate school so that I can get enough money for graduate school for PhD? Because Virginia Tech with their PhD programs, we're doing pretty well with funding, pretty well with the research. So, and especially if you're doing some of the programs, especially like the SMART program and things like that. But if you position yourself to say, this is my budget overall, how much of this budget can I afford to take for my undergrad? It allows you to start really thinking about things long term. Erica, I'm not a financial planner, but I'm sure you're proud of me as a protege because she is my financial planner. So, yeah. So
we can have a conversation after then. I like
that. Erica loves that conversation. So essentially, be prepared, but give the opportunity. So if a student, let's say a student is like, okay, the only thing that's keeping Virginia Tech off my list is the fact that I have heard that they're not going to offer money. Are you saying have that student reach out to y'all and say, listen, I'm interested in Virginia Tech, but I'm concerned about the money, have the conversation in advance?
Yeah, I think that's important. Okay. I think it's important to set the expectation so we can provide our expectation and make sure they're aligned. But then we give them a real genuine outlook on what to expect. And we make sure they're aware of all the different options. That's so key. You'd be surprised of how many students submit the FAFSA and don't do the general scholarship application. And then
I would not be surprised.
You wouldn't be.
Not the students that work with you, Jen.
No, I would not be surprised because I've had experience. So I would not be surprised. And that is something I do want to talk to Virginia Tech about, is frontlining so that we can, maybe start tagging them during the admissions process.
That's a good argument to make. I really would.
I mean, Juan, I have great arguments to make. Me and Virginia Tech arguing is never an issue. But I think reaching out. And I think for us, I always say trust and transparency. As long as students are clear about what they expect. Erica, do you feel like you know what to expect financially after this conversation as a parent?
Oh, definitely. This has clarified some things for sure.
Okay. So now let's go into is test optional?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. This is what I hear in the barbershop, because we're going to go back to the barbershop. I'm going to actually ask some of the questions. Guys, I'm going to get to the questions, but I have my own questions. And it's my platform. So that's how it works. But listen, this is how it's always presented. Listen, they say optional, but you want to do everything that's optional. And that's not, Erica, that's not for us. Okay. Optional is not for us. If you want to be competitive, you're underrepresented. And somebody did ask, what defines underrepresented for Virginia Tech?
Sure.
So let's start there. What defines underrepresented?
Yeah. Sure. And I'm going to answer what defines underserved too, because that's
okay.
Underrepresented is underrepresented by race, ethnicity. So right now that's African American, Hispanic, Latino, Native American, Hawaii Pacific, or two or more races that indicate one of those that are underrepresented. Underserved is low income, Pell eligible, veteran status, and first generation, regardless of race.
And Appalachian.
So that's a really good question. So there is a rural horseshoe initiative.
Okay.
And so that's becoming a stronger focus.
Okay.
But that's not necessarily a piece that we're capturing in the application right now. But it's definitely you're kind of ahead of us there. Definitely something.
I always, just later in that way. So if you're one of those groups and you're hearing optional ain't for us, you need to be taking this SAT, and we don't care if the score is low, submit it anyway, because not having it is worse than having a low score is better than having a no score. What's your response to that?
So we truly are test optional. We extended it to 2026. So the next.
So you have the opportunity to not extend it.
Oh yeah, and that's been a huge part of our accessibility push. I think I want to be very clear. I'm a huge proponent of test optional.
I know that,
and I would even argue test blind. I think we'd
love to hear that.
Baby steps, right?
Although I do say test free, but because it's like now we're freedom. Yeah.
And so I think it's really important that students view it in a way that this is something we're really pushing from the admission standpoint, and not something that we necessarily feel forced with because as a response to COVID, because cancellations occurred, test centers weren't available, and we felt like we had no choice. We really viewed this as an opportunity to move our holistic review, which we made substantial changes to in 2018, to become even more holistic. And so what we've been able to show in offer rates is there isn't a major difference in offer rates, whether you do test optional or regular. And we're noticing actually, when you split those two groups up, a higher yield rate from our test optional students.
What does yield mean? Define yield for everybody.
Yeah, so yield is the number of students that are offered admission that decide to come to Virginia Tech.
Okay.
So we're seeing out of who we offer a stronger response from those who take advantage of test optional.
Okay.
And we've seen huge contributions to diversity through underrepresented, underserved. And we're getting feedback from our students that they feel like this is this one barrier that we've completely eliminated. Now, I want to be transparent. Virginia Tech is not a pioneer in this area. There are other colleges, universities. I will name George Mason in state that is a pioneer.
CNU too, the college I thought I was going to.
Yeah, those are two great examples that years ahead of the pandemic really recognize the strengths. And I want to give them credit. That's why I'm saying this, of the advantages this provides to their student body. I think what the pandemic allowed a lot of institutions to do is really pilot and explore this as an option and provide evidence. So why we're extending it to 2026 is we know it's working. And we want to show the metrics, and a key metric we're going to gather by expanding this to 2026 is graduation, to show, hey, our retention rate is holding, our progression rates are holding, and now we have that last piece of data with graduation. We can really make a strong argument on expanding this or permanently adopting it in the future beyond that.
And I would say also, like one group that kind of gets overlooked in the test optional discussion, because we always talk about, underrepresented first generation, whatever, is also students with disabilities, especially with the accommodation issues with College Board and ACT. And, I've had students break their hand and not get accommodations for the test with a cast on their hand. Those students also have opportunities that a lot of times I find that my students with disabilities are not accurately reflected as somebody with, ADHD and who had accommodation. So now this is the scare tactic though, Juan. Okay. I'm chilling in Erica. You and I are hanging out. And then this test prep provider says, oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, you could get in, but you're not going to get scholarships. What do you say to that?
I would say that there's no scholarships at Virginia Tech while we're test optional that utilize the SAT, because we made a decision early on that we're not going to try to decipher between the groups that have SAT and those that don't. The fairest route through the pandemic and through test optional that we have expanded is to exclude SATs from any scholarship consideration.
Merit aid?
Yes. So yes, merit aid. I'm talking about all scholarships. Okay. Yes. I want to be very clear on this. And there aren't, with the exception of X or no, when we're looking at merit-based scholarships, the general scholarship application, SATs have been removed from that process because we just did not feel comfortable trying to compare someone who was test optional to someone who had test scores. We felt that it was a better practice to just remove it and focus on other variables and make decisions based on that.
So for you, holistic means, I know like holistic, you have a whole book on it, but holistic means if there's one thing I should be focusing on as a student, somebody asked GPA, and it's like, it's hard to explain to somebody not in this industry. Like GPA feels like it's a fixed point for everybody, but it's not. It's like GPA plus school profile plus, like, is everybody getting A's at your school plus, what classes are you taking? What's a common core of a Virginia Tech student? Like, like, of course you're going to have your core math, science, 4 years of math, 4 years of science, 4 years of whatever. But what are some things that you like to see in an application?
Yeah, so we kind of divided in the academic side and then the personal side. So on the academic side, rigor and grades are huge.
And rigor is defined as?
You're looking at advanced level coursework. So whether that's honors, AP, IB, dual enrollment, depending on what's offered at your school. And we always
That's what I was about to ask.
Yeah, we always look at you in the context of the school.
The context of, because one thing that comes up is, well, this school has 15 APs and we only have 30.
Yeah,
but we're the same district.
Yeah, we're looking
based
at
on the
your
school.
high school. Your high school. Yeah, and that takes time, but we have readers that have been doing this for a really long time. We have a seasoned staff that we use to our advantage, especially with the in-staters. We try to do this with out-of-state to a certain degree, but there are some cases where we don't get a lot of volume, and so we have readers kind of doing some research to figure out, okay, what's actually offered here. And you see that through their school profile or just calling the counselor. But for the in-staters, we've got this down pat to where we're able to know, hey, we recognize that name. We know what kind of offerings are there. We know what type of students we typically offer from there and how they do once they're at Virginia Tech and how successful they are once they graduate. All this is important to us. So for us, rigor and grades, notice I'm not saying GPA because GPA is meaningless. Everyone competes in a different way. We're focusing on grades, A's and B's. We actually recalculate the GPA too on a uniform format. 1 point for AP, IB, dual enrollment. I don't care if your school district is giving you 3 points, which we do see in some cases. You're only getting 1 point. So to even that out, it levels out the playing field. But then we look on the personal side too, and that's the holistic review. And Jen, I get the concern with using that term holistic because I mentioned earlier, I've got a junior. We're visiting colleges. Everyone uses that term.
Well, I would have told you not to visit the colleges. Erica, I'm like, Erica, don't let them visit the college until you know the offer.
And
like,
pick their dream school.
No.
Yeah.
I have a junior also. So.
I'm like, I took her with me to Texas, but I was like, no, don't get out of the car without saying, you're going to love this college, but like, tell us what you like about it. We're not committing. And also you can only go here if it's this amount of money. Let's go.
Yeah.
You say that, and then you took her to 60 College.
Oh, I took her everywhere. Yeah, well, like I'm the auntie, so I was going to do whatever I wanted. But so So I know people are like, let's pack on every AP.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
So, got a great example. I'm going to go to my junior. You know, and I want to be clear. Everyone thinks I tell her what courses to take. It's like, no, there's no success in that. There's no success in that.
So you're saying juniors don't listen to their parents?
No, well, I don't think any student or any child.
That is amazing
to
me.
I will tell you, teenagers, I'm really good at a lot of things. I haven't figured them out yet.
Okay.
So
hoping to learn that too, Juan.
What I'm able to figure out in conversations with her is where is her comfort level? Because she always asks, what do colleges want to see? And I say, if that's your driving motivation in taking a class and your comfort level with the material isn't there, then you taking an AP physics class isn't going to be to your advantage if you're not going to be successful at that level. And so the bigger question is, where do you feel comfortable and prepared to tackle AP-wise? Every student has strength. And Jen, I know that's what you're really good at, figuring out what the strengths of the student are and providing that path to them, whether it's colleges, course selection.
Skylar, let's get out of AP English because that's not for you, girl.
Well, that's exactly my point. So talking to Jordan, my daughter, and hearing she's like, no, I don't want to do AP physics. I know colleges want to look at AP physics, but I would rather jump off a cliff than do AP physics. I'm not good at it. Okay, then don't do AP physics. What are you good at? I really want to do AP English. I want to do AP language. I want to do, and you're like, okay, hold on. You're at 5 AP courses. How do you feel comfortable with that course load? And it's having them reflect on that because they think they can do everything.
Right,
but then you got to remind them, hey, you're doing travel volleyball. You're on the high school volleyball team. You work. She works at Subway. You work at Subway. So are you going to be able to handle this? And it at least it causes them to pause and kind of reflect, okay, maybe I don't need to do this dual enrollment. Research shows there is huge advantages for taking advanced level coursework, whether it's AP, dual enrollment. And I tell this to students all the time.
And you don't have a distinction between like, we prefer dual enrollment over
exactly.
AP.
Yeah, none at all. None at all.
Okay.
Yeah, none at all. Virginia. But research has shown the more advanced level coursework you take, the more prepared you are for the courses at Virginia Tech. The more prepared you are, the more likely you are to get stronger grades. The stronger grades you get first year, more likely you're going to continue on to second, third, and fourth year. Stronger grades you have throughout college, the more likely you are to graduate. The stronger grades you have as a graduate, that first job, which is really the only job that cares about your GPA, kind of sets you on that time, right? So there's a little bit of a domino effect there,
right?
That I try to explain. But if you look at that research, there's a little bit of economies of scale. You get prepared to a certain amount, but after X amount of AP courses, really doesn't, you don't double the impact by doubling the number of AP courses.
Right.
You actually see a significant decrease on impact and readiness. So it's usually just taking a balance of enough junior year and senior year to get you to that level of preparation to where you're going to be able to get to on that path of, good grades, which has impact on retention, graduation, and then career placement, or graduate school placement, depending on the student, if they want to continue on beyond that. All that kind of ties into that readiness. And that backtracks, right? And that's where it's not just course selection in high school. It actually spills into middle school, which is crazy.
Right.
But, I heard recently that if you're not taking Algebra 1 in 6th or 7th grade, the chance of you hitting calculus
you're not doing that.
Between 0 and 10%.
Yeah,
and
you're
calculus is a huge benchmark for a lot of schools. And that's a whole other conversation. And we can spend hours on equity and whether that's right or wrong.
I could go into calculus discussions forever, right?
Let's go down that rabbit hole. But let's acknowledge that colleges do really look for that particular class, especially for STEM-related fields. So that's where course selection is so important. And I would argue this conversation for families, especially first-gen families like myself, need to be happening much earlier than where they're taking place now. If we're really going to move the needle, I'm not just college accessibility, but college success and access to that next level of professional or graduate school. That we need to start having these conversations earlier.
And I would also say we need to have the conversations within our district earlier, because, we see that historically excluded first generation, and especially students with disabilities as well, are excluded from certain pathways because they believe in certain capabilities for certain students. And then the student doesn't realize that by not taking Algebra 1 by this grade, they're now excluded from certain pathways. But we can talk about that later. Okay. Do you have a fly-in program? I'm going to have you guys email directly admissions on that. I know you guys probably do, but also if the Black alumni, like we're in the Black alumni group, if an alumni group wants to get together and have a conversation with admissions, what's the best way to do that?
Oh, reach out to us.
Okay, so Eric and I are going to host one there. We've said it for years. Eric and I have said this for
and now
5 years, but now we have Skylar to move the ball forward, because now we're like, oh, right, we forgot we were supposed to do that for you years ago. So we'll put together a little group, come up there. Okay.
Absolutely, and I will be happy to help in any way.
Will you make sure that they have London broil?
Are we back on food again?
No. That or lobster, yes, I can promise that.
Okay.
I've noticed people, they prefer.
Yeah, the lobster sells. I mean, like, you want to close a student. Okay, so I'm going to ask 3 last questions. Erica, do you have any questions as a parent before we go? Because I know we're a little bit over time. Well, I don't know. I don't think I set a time, actually. We're not over time. It's my program.
Yeah, actually, Juan answered the questions that I had as we were talking about the test optional. That's really important, because
she's debating this right now.
Exactly. I mean, it's important.
How would you have her make the decision?
As a parent?
Because her biggest fear is, and we've talked about this, her biggest fear is she doesn't take the test and then all of a sudden she needs it.
No, that's not going to happen. At least for our I get
it's not a tech.
It's different. Yeah. Well, here's the challenge.
I don't know any school in the Commonwealth where that's true. Like when I rack my brain, William and Mary just went test optional forever. They were like, we're out.
Yeah, but what's the downside of not taking the test?
I'm sure you were jealous, like, oh.
Yeah, and I know that director, Tim Wolf, wonderful.
Yeah,
great decision, and I applaud them. I applaud them. And yes,
it also makes it
I'm a little jealous. Yes,
it makes it easier for other institutions in the Commonwealth
to make that.
It's like somebody has to do it first, right?
But Erica, so tell me, what is the downside? Why would anybody take it? I know there's certain universities that are requiring it, but if you're applying at schools that are test optional, what's the negative to just saying, hey, I'm not going to invest spend the time and energy and, and money to do the test prep, to go take the test if it's test optional? What do I miss out on? What does my kid miss out on by making that decision?
I think it depends. So, in the Commonwealth, I think they're in a really good position, but they start looking at some schools outside of Virginia. Right. You can see Florida as a state is really moving towards that. You don't want to limit their options. And so it really just depends on the student. If a student is saying, hey, I'm only looking at in-state schools, that's a very different conversation than someone, which you see in Virginia, because Virginia does have a higher mobility rate for going out of state. That they do have schools outside of Virginia that are requiring it, or are using scholarships for awarding, utilizing it, or have a preference. Because that's the other thing. There are schools that are test optional that very clearly state their preference is for a test score.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to name any names there, but that really has an impression. That makes an impression on the student, because if a student, and I know this is advice I got when I was a high school student, is if they use the word optional, do it.
Do it.
Right? Yeah. If they use optional, do it. Optional essays, do it. optional test score. And so you follow that type of framework. You think, all right, the school's saying we're test optional, but our preference is you submit test scores. Students hearing, do it. Just if there's any edge I can take, then I want to take it. So yeah, it really depends on the student. You know.
At Virginia Tech, there is no advantage my kid not taking the test over some kid who did and say scored well. Everything else being the same, do they have the same opportunity or not?
Question.
Yeah, they really do. You know, really, for the vast majority of our programs, test optional is more than enough for what you're looking for. When you look at some of our competitive programs, so let's use engineering as an example.
Right.
A lot of engineers test well. And so they're going to utilize their math score. They're going to look, hey, I have a really strong math score, well above 650. I want this to be part of my portfolio. They're going to include it. But then you have some other students that are not going to include it, but they have that strength in math and science. They have the rigor.
They show it in the grades.
Yeah. And they're just as competitive. And the advantage is because we have volume on our side, there's never a situation. I've been doing admissions at Virginia Tech since 2007. There's never been a single situation where we're down to 2 students. And we're saying, all right, we've got a test optional student and we got one who has a test score. They're identical across the way. One has a test score. We only have room for one. This does not occur.
You're just like, let's admit them both.
Take it both because we have volume on our side. We have an incoming class where the difference between 7,085 is not much different than 7,086. I mean, we're able to make those decisions and do that.
Got it.
But Erica, I will say this. I think parents only think about test optional as like, well, my student's going to lose something if they don't test, but they never think about the summer that you spend test prep, the opportunities that you miss out on. Like the one thing I did notice that my students who were just essentially cut off from testing during the pandemic, all of a sudden they just had time to do jobs, or they had time to do more volunteer work, or they had time. If there's a different way to make the case, and I think that's one of the things that I learned from my friend Sean is, you know, at Queens, he goes, think about it as, if I wanted to put this case together, as a lawyer, what would I include in the case? And if the test score is not a good data point for you, taking time to try to make it a good data point is taking the time away from something more meaningful, right? And so when I was talking to Erica, she was like, "Oh, let's try to squeeze it in." I was like, "When? Skylar has no time already. Like she has
that's
no time."
Exactly what you just said is exactly what we're weighing, because, like, for example, she applied to governor's school and she just found out today that she made it to
you didn't tell me.
I thought I did. I'm pretty sure we did, but her application has made it to the state, so they won't know until April. So will she have the summer to do, you know, like test prep, or won't she? Because that's a month that she'd be gone. So just
if she's never done well on standardized testing, I don't think. And even like I don't want to say a bad word in front of you, but Georgia Tech, even who is test required, is like, I wouldn't retest for us. So even the schools in Florida, there's schools in Florida that I know that are like, yeah, like we're required because the state told us to, but that doesn't mean we actually care about it. You have to figure out if the school cares about it, not if they require it, but if they care about it. And the good thing about the people who actually love the test is that they are so, when you talk to them, their eyes light up. They're like, the SAT, blah, blah, blah. Okay. But we're going to get you off.
I'm not one of them.
You're going to come back at one point. Come back to the barbershop at one point. Come back here.
Oh, you broke up. I didn't hear the question.
Okay. I said, Juan, are you going to come back to the barbershop at any point?
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. Anytime you have me, I'm happy to be here.
You can come to the barbecue that we're going to have. Okay. I'm going to ask the last 3 questions. I said that like 10 minutes ago, but we're going to do it now. Okay. We've already kind of covered, there's a college out there looking for you. But for the one thing I always say is, how do I know a Virginia Tech student when I meet them? Like, what are some things that you're like, yep, that's a Virginia Tech student?
Oh, I can answer this.
Yeah. What if you're like, I can't answer that?
Someone who's looking to change the world. And I know that sounds like, oh, Juan, you're way over.
It does sound like, oh, Juan.
Yeah. No, but I'm telling you, when I meet with students, they're always focused on impact. Okay. They're focusing on making sure, and this generation is really focused on that, right? This generation is really concerned about where we're headed as a society. And they want to make sure that to do their part on having an impact on changing that trajectory to represent more of their value system. And so when I talk to students, and when I find the students that are most interested in Virginia Tech, they associate with our value system of, hey, ut prosum, they're focusing on serving others, community service is huge, research on focusing on having impact in so many different disciplines. They're attracted to that mission focus on this having an impact on the world. So when I start talking to someone, they're like, no, I want this to change. I want this should be how the world should be, or this is how things should be. Things can be better. And this is my thoughts with that. That gets me excited, because I know, hey, you're going to fit in really well here, because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to change the world. We're trying to make it a better place. That is exactly what Virginia Tech is about.
But should they do paid research programs over the summer? Did you know those are big? Okay, those are becoming big in Northern Virginia. They're like, hey, you could research with a Harvard graduate.
Yeah. And and
it's just like, when I see that, I'm like, okay, nobody's taking that seriously.
Jordan they get
yes, so they are.
Mail. They get so much mail. And some of the stuff is, she's like, hey, look, I just got accepted into this prestigious honors program that has this summer program that costs $9,000 for me to be part of. And you're like, whoa, stop. No, don't do that. Right. And you talked about this, Erica, earlier, like, and Jen, you did too, about providing experiences on your own through your own connections for these students to be able to connect within the community and have that impact without having to pay anything. I mean, there are so many opportunities within their own community that they can grow in, or within their own area of the Commonwealth or area of the country if they're out of state, to where they can get just as much or more experience during those same timeline, whether it's a couple of weeks, usually they're a couple of weeks, or maybe even some are a few weeks over the summer, without having to pay several $1,000s. I mean, it's, and
don't discredit your experiences. I think you and I have talked about this, and we talk about this in admissions all the time. If you're taking care of your grandma, you're taking her to doctor's appointment, put that as an activity. Yeah. Like, actually put that as, or you're taking care of a sibling, or you're working a job so that you can help provide, like, put that on your list. Don't think that. I had one student, the favorite activity that I've seen is a student was just like, I got so tired of being a boy, not being able to talk to him about my emotions. So I created a gaming club, and we would just talk about our emotions while playing a game, like what's going on during the pandemic. And it was the only time that I felt comfortable talking to my friends. He essentially created a support group within a gaming community. So that's more meaningful. And I think sometimes when you're looking at a student's resume, I'm not seeing the student, I'm seeing what you paid for. And
you're right on. And being sure to not follow the historical definition. So you're talking about impact right there. You're talking about leadership, right?
Right.
It would be leadership in the traditional role of class president or captain, but it's leadership within your family.
And you don't have to be class president of everything.
Exactly. No, you really don't. Because going back to my earlier point of having impact, you can have impact within your community with no title associated with it. You can play an activist role within your community and within society that there is no official title, but you're still having just as much impact. And going to your point earlier within your family, my grandma, mi abuelita, I used to take her to doctor's appointments. I used to take her to all these things. And let me tell you, going to a doctor appointment with her, it was not a 30-minute encounter. It was a 2.5-hour experience because of all of her concerns, conspiracy theories, what do you got to, and it's kind of translating and all this other things. You pull something from that, right?
Right, you do.
Working.
That's a job.
Yeah.
Taking care of parents is a job, y'all.
Yeah. When I was working, I got so much experience from that I still utilize to today. I mean, you don't have to pay to get these experiences.
Right.
They're available in different forms, and we just try to encourage students to do that. So no, they're not required. Now, there are those students that have the means, they have the capabilities, more power to you. There are some things you can maybe get from that experience, whether it's at X institution. But most conversations I have with directors from those institutions is they don't give you a leg up for that school.
They don't.
They don't. They really don't.
They don't.
On campus, you're paying all this money. They're viewing like they're providing a service. Hey, we're giving you this experience. This doesn't give you a leg up with other applicants.
Right.
It's just an experience, and there's a lot of experiences to choose from. And that's going to be the same case once you're in college. There's going to be a lot of experiences you can choose from. Some are paid. Some will pay you. It just depends. Right. That continues on.
We say this all the time in my group, everything in admissions is a lie. What's the biggest misconception about Virginia Tech admissions?
All right, there's one that drives me crazy. The one I hear a lot is yield protection.
Okay.
So I'm going to explain what that means for some of the people who are listening who maybe have not heard that term. Essentially, yield protection means we don't offer the strongest because they don't think they're actually going to come to Virginia.
I've heard that.
Yeah, I know.
Erica, haven't you heard that?
Yes.
Yeah, yes. Especially, listen, for my TJ kids out there, they're like, they hate TJ. Don't apply to Virginia Tech because they hate TJ. Do you all hate TJ?
No, we do not hate TJ. I promise you, we offer a ton of people at TJ.
No, but you don't offer everyone at TJ. That's the problem. So the ones that you don't offer are very vocal about it.
Well, from my experience, those who don't get in are who I hear from. I never get thank you notes from those who are offered. Never hear from my group.
You're not offering to kids that you're like, let's just leave this really strong kid out the pool because they ain't coming here. They're going to.
And that just doesn't make sense to me because one, that would be selling ourselves short. I firmly believe we can get that student. I firmly believe we are a top destination. And so it makes no sense that as an institution, we don't think we're competitive for the top. Absolutely. We are a top ranked institution. We are a top destination.
You got Erica.
Yeah, exactly. we want the Ericas out there.
Yeah, obviously.
Offer the Ericas out there because we think they're too talented for our pool.
No, you were supposed to say Jen too, though.
Yeah.
We're looking at engineers here, Jen. That's what we're talking about. That's why I didn't mention.
Yeah, actually, if you can get my third major, I refuse to pay for a degree. That would be great. Okay, biggest misconception about the essays. I know we're running over. We're going to close soon. I promise. Biggest misconception about the essays. Like you see people online, Virginia Tech doesn't like this. They do like this. Make sure you include something from the course catalog.
Yeah. Now I have to admit, I'm not as familiar with some of the feedback on there, but I would tell you those essays are important. They are really important because it's the real only opportunity for the students to tell their story and give us an idea of who they are. We read every question on the application. Every question is specifically chosen for a reason.
Yeah, I know that.
The question is I always viewed it personally because that's the last thing we read before making a decision as the closing argument. And so that is literally the last piece we read before inputting the decision. And so I always tell students when you're filling out the application, when you get to those questions, stop, save, print that out, and reflect. Do not try to do the whole application in one sitting. I need you to reflect and think about those questions because each of those questions are providing a unique piece of your story. And we really want to know who you are. And those are read. They really are read. We actually have a separate group of readers just for the essay questions. They're reviewed independently without any personal identifying information. Each essay question is read twice. It's scored between 0 and 3, and there's 4, so there's a total of 12 points. And if the reader scores between reader 1 and 2 is greater than more than, I think it's 3 points, a third reader comes into play and the 3 are average. There's a lot of work that goes into reading those because they are just so important. Because they truly provide us insight of who you are. And going back to my earlier point, when we're trying to figure out who do we want in our community, who do we want that's going to contribute to the value system and where we're headed as a mission, as an institution, it's those who are really trying to change the world, who are trying to have impact, who are coming with experiences that are diverse and unique. They're going to make classroom discussion more worthwhile for everyone involved. And the essay questions give us that piece, gives us that insight, and we spend a lot of time on that.
I know personally, those essay questions are like your babies. Like you're like, wait a second, let me just change this one little word. Like every word in those essays has intention. I promise you that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a controversial question that I tell my students to ask. Virginia Tech is great. We love Virginia Tech. Okay, but I might not get in, or I might not be able to afford it. What other colleges are on your radar that are like Virginia Tech, maybe? And it doesn't necessarily have to be like, oh, they're the same size or the same scale, but it has the same spirit of Virginia Tech.
All right, so I'm going to answer that question, but I got to spin it for the first part. One, we have a great transfer option. So if you don't get in initially, we
my God, you're such a Scorpio. No, I refuse to lose.
Roads to Virginia Tech. And so even if it's not initially, we've got a great transfer team that if Virginia Tech is your top destination, we're going to make it happen.
And if if you don't get into Virginia Tech, you go to Nova, there's actually guaranteed admission.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So you don't, maybe if it's not affordable, I always tell people if it's not affordable and you have to go to community college, sit down with the college that you want to go to and make a plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now I will answer your question now because I'm a unique perspective where I've seen a lot of the colleges and some out of state. I was really impressed with Duke. I thought that was a really cool campus.
I tell people don't go to Chapel Hill because Chapel Hill's intoxicating. Duke, okay. What about Duke did you like?
I thought it was a really cool campus. It was very welcoming. I thought they had some really key, unique aspects focused on student success. I was really impressed overall. And then in-state, because you got to do an in-state, and I am going to answer your question. I'm not going to dance around it. Really impressed with CNU, Christopher Newport University.
Yeah.
It wowed me, I got to say. It wowed Jordan. She is an excellent student. She is top caliber. I'm bragging about her. She was blown away by CNU, and it's near the top of her list. What an impressive campus. What an impressive visitor experience. The tour, 2 tour guides.
You were like, I bet you were taking notes. Like,
oh yeah, they had a coffee station. I was blown away. I mean, they have figured it out. But kudos to the message they send across of just making sure that the focus again on student success, on making sure that you're going to feel supportive and you feel like you're part of something. It was really well done. Any
other research institutions that you like?
So I'm going more way out of state. We're often, we have a lot of crossover with Texas A&M. Really cool campus. It's been a few years since I've been there. A lot of similarities with Virginia Tech. So I think it makes sense that you see that kind of on both lists for those with high mobility.
And a smaller satellite would be UTSA because they just became a Division I.
Oh yeah.
Okay, Erica.
Now I have to agree with you about Christopher Newport. Did that tour with my son. Wow, we were wowed also with that. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're just really in the beginning stages of looking, so it's hard for me to say.
I mean, to college for Skylar. So.
Have you now? I'm not sure that was me yet, but
I have my top here. 2.
Okay.
Actually, I have my top 3, but thanks, I think. Jen. Any last parting words? Now, I am notorious because I wrote, "Don't go to Virginia Tech because you can't afford it." So, what's your last words to? I wouldn't say a former Virginia Tech hater. I think I did it. I did it out of love. Like,
I so harsh.
Yeah, I mean, out of love, though. Like I am the most accountable to the people I love. So, Virginia Tech is my heart. Any last words of advice to students, to parents, and especially as somebody who has a perspective of a junior going in? Any last words for them?
For me, I would say, it's all going to work out.
Yeah, that's true.
We talked, you both kind of alluded to just the pressure and the time students are putting in through all this. My message is always to them, especially as a junior, as they're entering senior year, enjoy senior year. There are some key milestones within that senior year that you need to be able to pay attention to and be part of, and not just be focusing on that next chapter. There's a lot you take away from that final year that really sets you up personally, maturity wise, and ultimately academically for that next chapter as the first year in college. So don't just be focusing in the future, focus on the present too. Enjoy that time. It will work out. It will work out. It always does. I know this is a high anxiety process. I know there's a ton of misinformation out there, which makes things so much worse. And so I encourage students also to go to the source. Don't listen to your friend about Virginia Tech. Don't listen to your parents' neighbor who graduated from Virginia Tech.
Don't listen to YouTube.
Yeah.
Reddit.
Go to these wonderful sources. Go to Virginia Tech. Ask us. We view ourselves as guides. Go to these. You've got this great resource online now. Listen to these resources. There are so many good sources of information that are out there that you can rely on reliably. There isn't a secret formula or loophole to get into any of these schools, whether it's Virginia Tech or others. The admissions people put a lot of time and effort into trying to make the process as fair as possible for everyone and keep everyone on an even playing field. So it's more about, where do you picture yourself being? Where do you picture yourself being successful and having that strong launch pad? And as high anxiety as this is, I got a secret for you. You're not locked in at that school. So even if that first initial school you choose isn't the right one, about 25% of our students come from somewhere else. So there are options to switch over. So don't feel like you're making a decision for the rest of your life. You're not. Most 3/4, you find your home and you're fine there. But for a quarter others, you figure out, what, this isn't what I was expecting, or I found something that is a better fit. You can make those adjustments, whether it's at the end of your first year or second year, and you're going to end up just fine at the end of that process.
Okay, well, you'll have to come by for the barbecue if we ever have that barbecue. I know Erica and I will plan something for our alumni group and things like that we've said that we're going to do for 5 years, but we're going to actually do it now because Skylar is our driving force.
All right.
But Erica, I appreciate you. I'm gonna turn it off, and then we'll be here for a second so I can say goodbye to y'all. But yeah. Please reach out to Juan. The one thing that I don't like is when somebody asks me a question, I'm like, have you asked admissions? And they're like, no. I'm like, so what I'm going to do, and I think the students think it's like a revolutionary act. They're like, Miss Jen, thank you so much. I'm like, I'm going to put you on an email with admissions, and I'm going to ask your question. Or I'm going to have you ask the question. And they're like, I got my question answered. It's incredible. Yes. Admissions will answer your questions. So, but thank you all so much. Please feel free to reach out to me. Erica, where can people find you, Erica?
Oh, you can find me at, just because you asked, 5ringsnationscapital.com.
And Juan, where can people find information about Virginia Tech? It's such a small school.
Yeah, admissions@vt.edu is our main email. You can check out our website. We have daily info sessions and tours Monday through Saturday. We've got open house programs. Just check out our website. And again, if you prefer phone, which I know not many people in this generation do, but if you want to actually talk to somebody, we've got a strong frontline team to make sure we're there to answer your phone calls too. If you prefer text, anything else, we're there too. We also have a presence on TikTok. We have TikTok is big. Student led. Don't worry, you're not going to see me dancing or anything like that.
Yes, we will. We're going to get you to dance on TikTok. Yes, we will.
Your whole college tour with dancing this past summer.
Yeah.
Well, they might want to see you dancing, not me. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever.
You guys have a really strong Instagram.
Your poison is. We're there. We're focused on access. We want to be part of your journey. We want to be helpful.
Love that. Yeah. And don't wear a mini skirt in the winter if you go to Virginia Tech just because you want to be cute. Everybody makes that mistake. Don't do it. It's too cold.
But you only make that mistake once. That's the thing.
I made it. I never stopped making that mistake.
No, Jen.
Some of us we're living out humanity's life carefree.
Yeah, I did make that mistake.
I'm going to end the broadcast for our live viewers. Thank you all so much. And the fly-in, you can go ahead and reach out to admissions and they can get you more information. And I will say goodbye to you guys after I end the broadcast. Bye.